Marcus Blackwood stood at the tall windows of his mansion, watching the sun disappear behind the hills. His pale hands gripped the curtains as darkness fell over the estate. For 300 years, he had ruled as the vampire monarch of the Northern Territories, but tonight his thoughts were not on power or blood. They were on his daughter. Elena Blackwood sat in her wheelchair near the fireplace, her dark hair falling like silk around her shoulders. At 19, she had inherited her father's striking beauty but not his supernatural strength. A rare condition had left her legs paralyzed since birth, something that even vampire blood could not heal. Marcus had tried everything, consulted every healer and witch across the lands, but nothing worked. "Father, you're pacing again," Elena said without looking up from her book. Her voice was soft but carried the authority that came from being a monarch's daughter. "The floorboards are already worn from your worry." Marcus turned to face his daughter, his red eyes softening. "I cannot help it, my dear. The reports from the council worry me. There have been threats against our family. Against you." Elena closed her book and wheeled herself closer to her father. "We have guards. We have the protective spells around the estate. What more can you do?" "More than you know," Marcus replied, his mind already forming plans. "I will not take chances with your safety." The next morning, a convoy of black cars arrived at the Blackwood estate. Men in dark suits carried boxes of equipment up the grand staircase. Marcus had hired the best security company in the region, one that specialized in protecting wealthy families from threats both human and supernatural. Sarah Chen, the head technician, supervised the installation. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and quick fingers that worked with precision. As she mounted cameras in hidden corners and installed motion sensors throughout the mansion, she couldn't help but notice the unusual atmosphere of the house. "Mr. Blackwood," Sarah said as she tested a camera in Elena's bedroom, "this is quite an extensive system. Are you expecting specific threats?" Marcus appeared in the doorway so quietly that Sarah jumped. She had not heard his footsteps on the marble floor. "My daughter is precious to me, Ms. Chen. I will spare no expense to ensure her protection." Sarah nodded and continued her work. She had installed security systems in many wealthy homes, but something about this place felt different. The servants moved with unusual silence, and she never saw anyone during daylight hours except for Elena and a few human staff members. Elena watched from her wheelchair as cameras were installed throughout her private spaces. "Father, this feels excessive. Do you really think someone would try to harm me here, in our own home?" "The world is changing, Elena," Marcus said, kneeling beside her chair. "Our enemies grow bolder. They know that hurting you would destroy me more than any direct attack could." As the installation continued over 3 days, Sarah began to notice strange things. The family seemed to sleep all day and become active only at night. The main dining room had no mirrors, and she never saw Marcus or any of his personal staff eat regular food. When she asked about meal schedules to plan around her work, the human cook just shook her head and said the family had special dietary needs. On the final day of installation, Sarah was testing the surveillance system when she discovered something that made her blood run cold. The cameras could see Elena clearly, but whenever Marcus walked past, the screen showed only empty space. It was as if he cast no reflection in the digital world, just as vampires cast no reflection in mirrors. Sarah's hands trembled as she realized what kind of family she was working for. She had heard stories, legends passed down through generations, but she had never believed them. Now, faced with the evidence of her own eyes, she could not deny the truth. Marcus Blackwood was a vampire, and she was installing surveillance equipment in a monster's home. The question that haunted her was what to do with this knowledge. She thought of Elena, sweet and gentle in her wheelchair, seemingly unaware of her father's true nature. Was the girl human, or was she something else entirely? And, if Sarah tried to expose the truth, who would believe her? Meanwhile, Marcus reviewed the camera feeds from his office, satisfied with the comprehensive coverage. Every entrance, every hallway, every room where Elena might go was now under constant watch. He could monitor her safety from anywhere in the mansion and would receive alerts if any unauthorized person approached. "The system is impressive, Father," Elena said, joining him in the office. "But I cannot shake the feeling that we are now prisoners in our own home. Better prisoners than victims, Marcus replied, his fingers dancing across the keyboard as he adjusted camera angles. I have lived too long and lost too much to take any chances with your life. Elena studied her father's profile in the glow of the monitors. Sometimes she wondered about the stories the servants whispered when they thought she could not hear. Stories about her father's past, about the true reason they only entertained guests at night, about why she had never seen him during daylight hours. But those were just stories, she told herself. Her father was eccentric and wealthy, nothing more. The pale skin, the red eyes, the nocturnal lifestyle, these were just family traits, perhaps the result of a rare genetic condition. Sarah finished the final calibrations and prepared to leave the estate. As she packed her equipment, she wrestled with her conscience. Should she report what she had discovered to the authorities? Should she try to help Elena, who might be in danger living with a creature of the night? In the end, she decided to keep silent, at least for now. She had no proof that would convince anyone, and making accusations against someone as powerful as Marcus Blackwood could destroy her life and her business. But she kept copies of the surveillance footage that showed Marcus's inhuman nature, locked away in a safe place. As Sarah's van disappeared down the long driveway, Marcus felt a sense of relief wash over him. Elena was now as protected as modern technology could make her. The cameras would be his eyes when he could not be present, and the motion sensors would alert him to any danger. But Marcus did not know that Sarah had discovered his secret, or that she was now struggling with what to do about it. He did not know that his attempt to protect Elena had actually created a new threat to their carefully maintained existence. The surveillance system hummed quietly in the walls of the mansion, recording everything, seeing all. It would indeed protect Elena from external threats, but it had also captured evidence of the supernatural truth that the Blackwood family had hidden for centuries. In her room that night, Elena sat before her window, looking out at the gardens bathed in moonlight. She loved these quiet moments when the estate felt peaceful and safe. The new cameras blinked silently in the corners of her room, red lights indicating they were recording her every move. She did not mind the surveillance. If it gave her father peace of mind, she would accept the loss of privacy. Elena had learned long ago to make sacrifices for the people she loved, and her father's happiness was worth more to her than her own comfort. Marcus stood in his office, watching the multiple screens that showed his daughter in her room. The system was working perfectly, giving him clear views of every angle. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to feel hopeful that Elena would remain safe. Neither father nor daughter suspected that their greatest threat would not come from the enemies Marcus feared, but from the very person he had trusted to install their protection. Saracen carried with her the knowledge that could destroy their world, and she had not yet decided what to do with that dangerous secret. The mansion settled into its nighttime routine, with Marcus and Elena active and alert while the human servants retired to their quarters. The surveillance cameras continued their silent watch, recording the movements of a vampire monarch and his disabled daughter, capturing evidence of a supernatural existence that was never meant to be seen by mortal eyes. As dawn approached, Marcus retreated to his private chambers, secure in the knowledge that Elena was protected by the most advanced security system money could buy. But protection from external threats was only half the battle. The real danger now came from within, from the secret that Saracen carried and the decision she would soon be forced to make. The first part of their story was ending, but the consequences of Marcus's choice to install surveillance would soon spiral beyond his control. The very technology he had chosen to protect his daughter would become the weapon that threatened to expose their supernatural existence to a world that would never accept them. 3 weeks after the surveillance installation, Saracen sat in her small apartment, staring at the laptop screen that displayed the copied footage from the Blackwood estate. The video showed Elena wheeling through the mansion's corridors, but whenever her father appeared in the frame, there was only empty space where he should be. Sarah had tried to convince herself that it was a technical glitch, a malfunction in the camera system. But deep down, she knew the truth. She had grown up listening to her grandmother's stories about vampires and other supernatural creatures. Her grandmother had been born in a village where such things were accepted as reality, not dismissed as folklore. The weight of this knowledge was crushing her. Sarah barely slept, barely ate, and her work performance was suffering. Her business partner, David Martinez, had started asking questions about her distracted behavior. "Sarah, you've been different since that Blackwood job. David said one afternoon as they worked on a new installation. What happened there? You won't talk about it, but something clearly spooked you. Sarah looked at her partner of 5 years, wondering if she could trust him with the truth. David was practical and logical, but he was also loyal. David, if I told you something that sounded impossible, would you believe me? Depends on what it is, David replied, setting down his tools. But we've been through a lot together. I trust your judgment. Sarah took a deep breath. The Blackwood family isn't human. At least, Marcus isn't. He's a vampire, David. I have proof. David stared at her for a long moment, then sat down heavily. Sarah, that's insane. Are you sure you're feeling okay? Maybe you should see a doctor. I knew you wouldn't believe me, Sarah said, pulling out her phone. But I have the footage. Look at this. She showed David the video of Elena and the empty space where Marcus should be visible. David watched in stunned silence as the invisible presence moved objects and opened doors. This has to be some kind of trick, David whispered. Maybe the camera was malfunctioning, or maybe he's using some kind of advanced technology to avoid detection. Do you really believe that? Sarah asked. Look at all the evidence. The family only active at night, no mirrors in the house, the way Marcus moved without making a sound. And his eyes, David, they were red, like nothing I've ever seen. David rubbed his forehead, trying to process what he was seeing. Okay, let's say you're right. Let's say Marcus Blackwood is actually a vampire. What do we do about it? Call the police? They'll think we're crazy. That's what I've been struggling with, Sarah admitted. But there's more. I've been researching the family, and Marcus has owned that estate for over a century. There are records going back generations, but the photographs always show him looking exactly the same age. While Sarah and David grappled with this revelation, life at the Blackwood estate continued its careful routine. Elena had adapted well to the surveillance system, and Marcus felt more secure knowing he could monitor her safety at all times. However, Elena was beginning to notice small changes in her father's behavior. He spent more time watching the monitors and seemed increasingly paranoid about potential threats. She decided to confront him about it one evening as they sat together in the library. Father, you've been different since the cameras were installed, Elena said, closing the book she was reading. You're watching those screens constantly. When was the last time you left the estate? Marcus looked up from his tablet, which displayed the camera feeds. I leave when necessary, Elena. But, with the current threats, I prefer to stay close to home. What threats, exactly? Elena pressed. You keep mentioning danger, but you never give me specifics. Are we really in such immediate peril? Marcus set down his tablet and moved to kneel beside Elena's wheelchair. There are factions within the vampire community who oppose my leadership. They know that the best way to hurt me is through you. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Vampire community? Father, what are you talking about? Marcus realized his mistake immediately. In his concern for her safety, he had revealed more than he intended. For 19 years, he had carefully hidden his true nature from Elena, allowing her to believe their family was simply wealthy and eccentric. Elena, Marcus began, but Elena held up her hand to stop him. Are you telling me that vampires are real? And that you're one of them? Elena's voice was steady, but Marcus could see the shock in her eyes. Marcus stood and walked to the window, his shoulders tense. I had hoped to protect you from this knowledge for much longer. Yes, Elena. I am a vampire, and I have been for over 3 centuries. I rule over a territory that spans several states, maintaining the ancient laws that keep our kind hidden from humanity. Elena sat in silence for several minutes, processing this revelation. And, me? What am I? You're my daughter in every way that matters, Marcus said, turning back to face her. Your mother was human, a woman I loved deeply. You inherited some of my traits, the enhanced intelligence, the night vision, the prolonged lifespan, but you remained fundamentally human. That's why I can't walk, Elena said, understanding dawning in her voice. The vampire blood conflicts with my human nature. Marcus nodded, his expression pained. I have spent decades searching for a way to heal you, but the mixture of vampire and human genetics creates complications that no one has been able to solve. Elena absorbed this information with remarkable composure. How long have you been lying to me? I was protecting you, Marcus said. The supernatural world is dangerous, Elena. I wanted you to have as normal a life as possible. Normal? Elena laughed bitterly. Father, I live in a mansion with no mirrors, I've never seen you during daylight hours, and our family friends only visit at night. Did you really think I hadn't noticed these things? Marcus realized that his daughter was far more perceptive than he had given her credit for. You suspected? I've suspected for years, Elena admitted. But I chose to trust you and not ask questions. I thought that if you wanted me to know the truth, you would tell me when you felt I was ready. Meanwhile, Sarah Chen was wrestling with an increasingly urgent decision. She had discovered that other security companies had installed systems for several wealthy families in the area, families that also seemed to have unusual nocturnal lifestyles and secretive behaviors. David, I think there's an entire community of them, Sarah said as they sat in her apartment, surrounded by research printouts and surveillance footage. Look at these client profiles. The Ravencroft family, the Ashford estate, the Midnight Corporation headquarters, they all have the same patterns. David studied the evidence that Sarah had compiled. If you're right, then we're talking about a massive conspiracy. Vampires living among us, hiding in plain sight. The question is, what do we do about it? Sarah asked. Do we expose them? Do we try to profit from this knowledge? Or do we keep quiet and pretend we never found out? Sarah, think about this carefully, David said. If these are really vampires, and they've managed to stay hidden for this long, they're probably very good at eliminating threats. If we try to expose them, we might not survive the attempt. Sarah knew David was right, but she couldn't shake the image of Elena from her mind. The young woman seemed innocent, trapped in a world she might not even fully understand. What about the daughter? Elena seems human. Maybe she doesn't even know what her father is. That's not our problem, David said firmly. Our problem is staying alive and protecting ourselves. But Sarah couldn't let it go. Over the next few days, she found herself monitoring the surveillance feeds she had secretly accessed, watching Elena's daily routines. She noticed that the young woman spent a lot of time reading and seemed lonely, with limited interaction with anyone except her father and the household staff. One evening, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She drove to the Blackwood estate, parking her van at the main gate. Using her security company credentials, she requested a meeting with Elena under the pretense of conducting a follow-up check on the surveillance system. The human housekeeper, Mrs. Williams, led Sarah to Elena's sitting room, where the young woman was reading by the fireplace. Elena looked up with surprise when Sarah entered. Miss Chen, isn't it? I remember you from the installation. Is there a problem with the cameras? Elena asked. Sarah closed the door behind her and approached Elena's wheelchair. Miss Blackwood, I need to talk to you about something very important. It's about your father. Elena's expression became guarded. What about my father? Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would either save Elena or doom them both. I know what he is, Miss Blackwood. And I think you deserve to know the truth, if you don't already. Elena's heart began to race. Had this woman discovered their family secret? I'm not sure what you mean. The surveillance cameras don't show your father, Miss Blackwood. When he walks past them, the screens show empty space. No reflection, no image at all. I have footage of objects moving by themselves, doors opening with no visible hand turning the handle. Sarah's voice was steady but urgent. Your father is a vampire. Elena stared at Sarah for a long moment, realizing that their carefully guarded secret had been discovered. What do you want? She asked quietly. I want to help you, Sarah replied. You seem like a prisoner in this house, watched constantly, never allowed to live a normal life. If you're human, you don't belong in this world of monsters. Elena's initial shock gave way to anger. Monsters?
You call my father a monster?
Elena, he's a creature that feeds on human blood.
How is that not monstrous? He's my father, Elena said firmly.
He has protected me, cared for me, and loved me unconditionally for 19 years. He may not be human, but he is not evil. Sarah realized she had misjudged the situation. Elena knew the truth about her father and was not a victim but a willing part of this supernatural family.
I'm sorry, I thought you might be trapped here, unaware of what he really is.
I appreciate your concern, Elena said, but my father would never hurt me or anyone under his protection. Now, I think you should leave before he discovers that you know our secret.
As if summoned by their conversation, Marcus appeared in the doorway, his red eyes fixed on Sarah with predatory intensity. Ms. Chen.
How interesting to find you here at this hour, speaking with my daughter about such sensitive matters. Sarah's blood turned to ice as she realized her mistake. She had walked into the lair of a vampire monarch, revealed that she knew his secret, and threatened his daughter's safety by trying to rescue her.
Father, she was trying to help, Elena said quickly.
She thought I was in danger. Marcus stepped into the room, and Sarah could feel the supernatural power radiating from him.
Is that so? And what, exactly, did you think you could do to help my daughter, Ms. Chen? Sarah knew that her life hung in the balance.
Every instinct told her to run, but she forced herself to speak calmly.
I thought she might not know what you are. I was wrong. I apologize for the intrusion.
You apologize for discovering our secret and attempting to interfere with my family? Marcus's voice was deadly quiet.
Tell me, Ms. Chen, who else knows what you've discovered?
Sarah hesitated, thinking of David and the evidence they had compiled.
Just my business partner. But we haven't told anyone else, and we don't plan to.
Marcus studied Sarah's face, using his supernatural senses to detect any deception. You're telling the truth, but that doesn't solve our problem. You know too much, and knowledge of our existence threatens not just my family but our entire community. Elena wheeled her chair between her father and Sarah. Father, she was trying to protect me.
Surely that counts for something.
It counts for the fact that she will die quickly rather than slowly, Marcus replied, his fangs beginning to show. But Sarah surprised them both with her response. Instead of begging for her life or trying to run, she looked directly at Marcus and said, if you're going to kill me, at least tell me why you don't just live openly.
Why hide what you are?
Marcus paused, intrigued by her question.
You would ask the predator to explain himself to his prey?
I'm asking one intelligent being to explain to another why an entire species chooses to live in shadows, Sarah replied.
You could rule openly. Your power clearly far exceeds anything humans could mount against you. Elena watched this exchange with fascination.
No human had ever spoken to her father with such directness, and he seemed to be considering Sarah's words rather than simply eliminating the threat she represented. Because, Ms. Chen, Marcus said finally, true power often lies in remaining unseen. We could rule through force, but then we would spend eternity fighting. Instead, we guide from shadows, influence from darkness, and maintain balance between our worlds.
Sarah nodded slowly. And Elena? Where does she fit in this balance?
Elena is my heir, Marcus said, his voice softening as he looked at his daughter.
She will one day lead our people, bridging the gap between vampire and human in ways that I cannot. This revelation shocked both women. Elena stared at her father in amazement. Father, I can't even walk. How could I possibly lead vampires?
Leadership is not about physical strength, my dear. It is about wisdom, compassion, and the ability to unite different factions. Your human heritage gives you something that pure vampires lack, the ability to understand both sides of our nature.
Sarah realized she was witnessing something extraordinary.
This was not just a monster protecting his territory, this was a father preparing his daughter for a destiny she was only beginning to understand. The question now was whether Sarah would live long enough to see how this story would unfold, or whether her discovery of the Blackwood family secret would be the last mistake she ever made. Marcus Blackwood stood motionless for what felt like an eternity, his red eyes fixed on Sarah Chen.
The silence in the room was broken only by the soft crackling of the fireplace and Elena's steady breathing.
Finally, Marcus made a decision that would surprise everyone present, including himself.
Miss Chen, you have put me in an impossible position, Marcus said, moving away from the doorway to stand near the window.
I cannot allow you to leave here with the knowledge you possess, yet my daughter seems to believe you acted with good intentions. Sarah felt her heart pounding but forced herself to remain calm.
Mr. Blackwood, I understand the position I've put you in. But I want you to know that I have no desire to expose your family or harm Elena in any way.
Nevertheless, you know our secret, and that knowledge is dangerous, Marcus replied.
However, I am prepared to offer you an alternative to death.
Elena leaned forward in her wheelchair, curious about what her father had in mind.
What kind of alternative?
Marcus turned to face both women.
Miss Chen, you will become part of our household.
You will serve as Elena's personal security advisor and companion.
In exchange for your silence about our true nature, you will be protected and provided for, but you will never be allowed to leave the estate permanently. Sarah's mind raced as she considered this proposal.
Essentially, Marcus was offering her a comfortable prison in exchange for her life.
And my business partner? David knows everything I know.
He will be dealt with separately, Marcus said.
But first, I need to know if you accept my offer. Before Sarah could answer, Elena spoke up. Father, you can't just imprison someone. If Sarah is going to stay here, it should be her choice, not because she's afraid of the alternative. Marcus looked at his daughter with surprise. Elena, this woman knows enough to destroy our entire community.
I cannot simply trust her good intentions. But, you can trust mine, Elena said firmly. I want Sarah to stay, not as a prisoner, but as a friend.
I've been lonely, Father.
The only people I ever interact with are you, the servants, and the occasional supernatural visitor. Sarah is close to my age, she's intelligent, and she's already proven she cares about my well-being. Sarah was moved by Elena's words, but she also understood the reality of her situation.
Mr. Blackwood, I appreciate your daughter's kindness, but I also understand that I don't really have a choice here. If staying means I get to live, then I accept your offer. Actually, you do have a choice, Elena said, surprising everyone. Father, show her.
Marcus frowned at his daughter.
Show her what? Show her what you showed me tonight.
Tell her about our world, our history, our purpose. Let her make an informed decision about whether she wants to be part of this life. Marcus considered his daughter's words. Elena had always been wise beyond her years, and her human perspective often provided insights that pure vampires missed.
Very well. Ms. Chen, if you are to join our household, you must understand what you are truly choosing.
Over the next hour, Marcus told Sarah about the hidden world of vampires. He explained how they had organized into councils and territories, how they maintained the ancient laws that kept their existence secret, and how they worked to prevent conflicts between supernatural beings and humans.
We are not the monsters that legends portray, Marcus explained. Most of us feed from willing donors or synthetic alternatives. We police our own kind, eliminating those who would prey upon innocence. We've built a civilization that exists parallel to human society, touching it at many points but remaining invisible. Sarah listened with fascination as Marcus described a complex society she had never imagined. And Elena is supposed to lead this community one day?
In time, yes, Marcus said, looking at his daughter with pride. But not in the way previous monarchs have led.
Elena represents something new, a bridge between our worlds.
Elena had been quiet during most of her father's explanation, but now she spoke up.
Sarah, I want to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Are you afraid of us? Sarah considered the question carefully. I was afraid when I first realized what your father is. But, now?
I'm more fascinated than frightened. Your world is incredible, and the fact that you've managed to remain hidden while building such a complex society is amazing. That's exactly the perspective we need, Elena said with excitement.
Father, Sarah could help us understand how humans perceive our kind.
She could help us bridge those gaps you're always talking about. Marcus was beginning to see his daughter's point, but he was still concerned about security.
Miss Chen, if you agree to join our household, you would need to undergo a binding ritual. It would prevent you from betraying our secrets, even under extreme duress. What kind of binding ritual? Sarah asked.
A blood oath, Marcus replied.
It would create a supernatural connection between us.
You would be able to sense when I or Elena are in danger, and we would know if you were threatened. But it would also make it impossible for you to reveal our existence to anyone without our permission. Sarah felt a chill at the mention of blood magic, but she also realized that this was probably the only way Marcus would ever truly trust her.
Would I become like you? No, Marcus said.
You would remain human, but you would be bound to our family.
The ritual is old magic, but it's not vampiric transformation.
Elena reached out and took Sarah's hand.
You don't have to decide right now. Why don't you stay here for a few days, learn about our life, and then choose? Marcus nodded. That's reasonable. Miss Chen, you may stay in the guest wing. Mrs. Williams will provide anything you need.
But understand that if you try to leave before making your decision, I will have no choice but to ensure your silence permanently. Sarah spent the next 3 days living at the Blackwood estate, and it was unlike anything she had ever experienced. During the day, when Marcus retreated to his private chambers, Elena showed Sarah around the mansion and grounds. The young woman was incredibly knowledgeable about history, literature, and art, having been educated by private tutors her entire life.
Don't you ever feel trapped here? Sarah asked as they sat in Elena's favorite garden on the second afternoon. Sometimes, Elena admitted. But where would I go?
I can't exactly live a normal human life, and I'm not vampire enough to survive in that world either.
This estate is the only place where I truly belong. Sarah began to understand Elena's isolation.
The young woman was caught between two worlds, belonging fully to neither.
What do you want for your future? Elena was quiet for a long moment. I want to help people. Both humans and vampires.
I think there's so much fear and misunderstanding between our kinds, and maybe I can help bridge that gap. But I'll need allies, people who understand both worlds.
That evening, Sarah made her decision.
When Marcus emerged from his chambers at sunset, she was waiting for him in the library with Elena. Mr. Blackwood, I've decided to accept your offer, Sarah said.
But I have some conditions. Marcus raised an eyebrow.
You're hardly in a position to make demands, Miss
Chen. Hear me out, Sarah said. First, I want to bring my business partner David into this arrangement. He's trustworthy, skilled, and he already knows your secret.
Second, I want to maintain my security company, but will specialize in serving the supernatural community. Third, I want assurance that I'm not just a prisoner here, that I'll have real responsibilities and the freedom to contribute meaningfully.
Elena smiled at Sarah's boldness.
I think those are reasonable requests, Father.
Marcus considered Sarah's proposals.
Having a human-run security company that catered to supernatural clients could be invaluable, and bringing in Sarah's partner might be better than trying to eliminate him.
Very well.
But the blood oath will bind you both, and any breach of trust will result in immediate consequences. The binding ritual took place that night in Marcus's private study. David arrived at the estate looking terrified but determined to support his partner. The ceremony was presided over by an ancient vampire named Cordelia Ashford, who served as the regional magistrate for supernatural law. This is a serious commitment, Cordelia warned Sarah and David before beginning the ritual. The blood oath will tie your life forces to the Blackwood family. You will share their protection, but also their dangers. Sarah and David exchanged glances, then nodded their acceptance. The ritual itself was brief but intense. As Cordelia spoke the ancient words and mixed their blood with drops from Marcus and Elena, Sarah felt a strange tingling sensation spread through her body. When it was finished, Sarah could sense Elena's presence in her mind, a warm and comforting feeling. She could also feel Marcus, like a powerful shadow at the edge of her consciousness.
How do you feel? Elena asked. Different, Sarah admitted. But, not in a bad way. I feel connected. Over the following weeks, Sarah and David transformed their security company into something unprecedented.
They began serving vampire families throughout the region, installing surveillance systems that could detect supernatural threats and designing security protocols that took into account the unique needs of immortal clients. Sarah also became Elena's closest companion and advisor. She helped the young woman understand human perspectives and worked with her to develop ideas for eventually bringing the supernatural and human worlds closer together.
We could start small, Sarah suggested during one of their planning sessions.
Maybe create charitable organizations that serve both communities, or establish cultural exchange programs.
Elena was excited by these possibilities.
Father has always said that change must come gradually, but I think our generation might be ready for more dramatic progress.
Marcus watched his daughter's transformation with amazement.
The installation of surveillance cameras had been meant to protect Elena from external threats, but Sarah's discovery of their secret had instead brought Elena exactly what she needed most, a true friend and ally who could help her navigate her unique position in both worlds. The greatest surprise came 6 months after Sarah joined the household. During a meeting with the Regional Vampire Council, Elena presented a comprehensive plan for gradually revealing the existence of supernatural beings to select human leaders, starting with a pilot program in their own territory. "This is madness," declared Councillor Vex, an ancient vampire who had opposed change for centuries.
"We have survived by remaining hidden. Why risk exposure now?"
Elena, sitting confidently in her wheelchair at the head of the council table, responded with poise.
"Because hiding is no longer sustainable. Human technology is advancing too quickly.
Surveillance cameras, DNA analysis, satellite imagery, they're making it increasingly difficult to maintain our secrecy.
Better to control the revelation than to have it forced upon us." Sarah, sitting at Elena's side as her human advisor, added, "The humans I've spoken with are more open to the possibility of supernatural beings than you might expect. Popular culture has already prepared them for the concept.
The key is to present yourselves as protectors rather than predators." Marcus felt a surge of pride as he watched his daughter command the respect of vampires who were centuries older than her. The surveillance system he had installed to protect her had indeed changed their lives, but not in the way he had expected. The council voted to approve Elena's pilot program, making her the youngest vampire in history to implement policy changes that would affect their entire species. As they left the council chambers, Marcus placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "I installed those cameras to keep you safe from our enemies," Marcus said. "I never imagined they would help you find the ally you needed to change our world."
Elena smiled up at her father.
"Sometimes the best protection comes from unexpected sources." Sarah walked beside them, still amazed by the path her life had taken. 6 months ago, she had been a simple security technician. Now she was helping to shape the future of human-vampire relations and had found in Elena not just an employer, but a true friend.
"What's our next step?" Sarah asked. Elena's eyes sparkled with determination. "We're going to change everything, Sarah.
We're going to create a world where vampires and humans can coexist openly, where my father doesn't have to hide what he is, and where no one has to live in the shadows anymore." As they walked through the mansion's corridors, the surveillance cameras Marcus had installed continued their quiet watch. But now, instead of recording a vampire monarch's desperate attempt to protect his daughter from a dangerous world, they captured the daily activities of a young woman who was preparing to change that world entirely. The cameras that had once been symbols of fear and protection had become witnesses to hope and transformation. And, in the months and years to come, they would record history being made by a disabled vampire princess, her devoted father, and the human security expert who had stumbled upon their secret and chosen to help them create a better future for all. Marcus Blackwood, the vampire monarch who had installed surveillance to protect his daughter, discovered that sometimes the greatest protection comes not from watching for threats, but from embracing the unexpected allies who arrive at your door. Sarah Chen's shocking move had indeed surprised him, but it had also given his daughter something more valuable than safety, the opportunity to fulfill her destiny as a bridge between worlds. The surveillance system continued to hum quietly in the walls of the Blackwood mansion, no longer just monitoring for danger, but recording the daily activities of a family that was quietly revolutionizing the supernatural world. And Elena Blackwood, the disabled daughter who had once seemed vulnerable and in need of protection, had become the most powerful force for change that the vampire community had seen in centuries. In the end, Marcus's attempt to shield his daughter from the world had instead prepared her to transform it.